Camembert Larson. We remember her from back in the day. She was kind of a big deal, like 5 or 6 years ago.
Man's joke right there.
Yeah. She's been kind of quiet in recent years. I honestly, it feels like a lovely little trip down memory lane that I'm even mentioning her at this point because it's been quite a while. But she was doing an interview with the Daily Telegraph, right? Because she's promoting her new play Electra, which is playing in the West End in London, and the talk soon turned to the subject of misogyny and backlash against her casting as Captain Marvel. Naturally. Because I guess they just couldn't let that one go from like so long ago. And it was kind of funny actually because the reporter tried so hard to get her. But there's some excerpts from it because interestingly, the article itself is behind a paywall on the Telegraph, which I am not going to pay for. But the excerpts made it out onto Twitter, so that's okay. So it says, when I asked Larson why she thinks some men were threatened by her casting, the temperature in the room plummets. I don't know, she says blankly. I don't pay attention. I ask if not paying attention is her way of dealing with the misogyny. A few seconds of chilly silence passed before she replies, what I would like you to see is that by continuing this conversation, you're putting me in connection with something that has nothing to do with me. Which is interesting.
I think that's legendary. I think there's some good.
She has learned.
Yeah, she definitely has.
She's learned a few things. She's learned a few things.
Thing is, this isn't actually new. So I remember reporting on stuff a while ago. Basically, nearly 2 years ago, a year and a bit ago, 2023, May 16th. I remember distinctly after the whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard controversy. I remember her being asked something and I was like, oh, what? And obviously doing this, I dug it out. She was asked point blank at Cannes Film Festival about what does she feel, because she's an outspoken advocate for Time's Up, how she feels about Johnny Depp's film being at that festival with her there. She was like, you're asking me that? I'm sorry, I don't understand the correlation of why me specifically. And then the reporter apparently emphasized, the sort of, status of who she is and, Time's Up and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, I'll see it if I see it. I don't know how I feel about it, frankly. Like she's started to do this more and more. It's actually quite a history of it now. I say kudos to her, Queen of the Cheese.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Disparu did a video about this just today. From his hotel room in Orlando, but basically saying that she's recognized the fact that reporters are not your friends. Like journalists are not your friends. If anything, they're your enemy. And all they're really doing is trying to get something controversial out of you. It's literally that meme of like the kid poking the dead body, going like, "Come on, do something, like say something controversial." And they tried really hard to get this out of her. There's a little bit more here to the interview. It says, it seems like a startling thing to say. I try again by asking whether she believes the film industry continues to pigeonhole actresses to the point that a female superhero can, for a certain sort of viewer, still feel like an aberration. I don't think there is a way for me to answer that, Larson replies, without it becoming a problem for me. Then her publicist intervenes to ask me to move on to the next question. I honestly wish that interview was recorded.
Yeah, that's pretty extreme fishing right there. I think
it is, because it's like you could tell they were getting frustrated. It's like the more she tries to stonewall them, the more they determined they were to get like that gotcha, or that soundbite that they could use.
So I've always had this thought about Brie Larson. I don't think many of these opinions are things that she actually has. I don't think she cares about any of this stuff. She's been around Hollywood since she was a kid. She's about as detached from the real world as you possibly can be. I think she's just really unlucky, and she tries to go the way the wind blows. And by the time she figures out which direction that is, it's too late, and she says something stupid. So now she's just going with, I just won't say anything. I'll just take no stance whatsoever. And that is, of course, going to probably come back to bite her in the ass the opposite direction, because the people who were liking her for her outspoken stances are going to be like, well, what happened? Why aren't you doing it anymore?
I didn't get that impression myself. I've always thought that she definitely believed these things 100%, but she got extreme backlash, and then Disney told her make a YouTube channel and fix your fucking image for like a whole year. And then after that, they were like, "All right, you don't have to do the YouTube thing anymore. Just shut the fuck up." And she was like, "Okay."
I think I tend to agree with Mahler to a degree on this one. I think she's still, because I'm a sucker for a good redemption arc myself, but I don't think this is it. I think she still 100% believes the things she said back in the day, and I think like when you're on top of the world and you feel like nothing can touch you, I think that's when you reveal who you really are, because there's no consequences to it, and that's what she revealed to the world. You know, now obviously she's suffered the backlash. She's, I think, suffered the career consequences, because really she hasn't done much of anything for the past 5 or 6 years, apart from The Marvels, which was a gigantic disaster. And those are prime years if you're an actress, from like the age of like, I don't know, 30 to 40. That's when you need to be cementing your legacy as like a big box office star. And she's wasted most of it doing absolutely nothing. I think she's been put in actors' jail after Captain Marvel. As successful as it was, financially, I think most casting agents in Hollywood probably knew that she was toxic after the backlash. And The Marvels was her chance to break out of jail and to get out. Obviously, that failed. And I think since then, she's really, she's kind of done. So she has suffered the consequences of this, and the fact that she's holding her tongue now doesn't mean that she has disavowed any of the things she said. I think it just means like she knows it'll have adverse consequences for her career. That's the only reason she's not doing it anymore.
I mean, that quote, right? Like, I can't answer this in a way that won't get me in trouble, meaning she probably does have something to say on it. But if she says
for sure, because I think. Yeah, because I think at this point, you would be better off just saying, you know what? I said some really dumb stuff back in the day. Like, all the fame and success kind of went to my head, and I said a lot of stupid things.
She's never going to say that.
Well, exactly. She won't. But like, that's what I would recommend at this point if you wanted to rehabilitate your image. And just say, yeah, it was dumb. Shouldn't have said it. I apologize. Let's try and move on and forget. But
well, that's kind of what I was getting at, Drinker. I think that she's just surrounded by her whole life. She's surrounded by a lot of people who kind of just tell her this is the world, this is what's going on. So maybe I misspoke in the way. Not that she doesn't believe it, but that she doesn't understand what she believes is kind of what I'm trying to say. Is she doesn't have any actual life experience with any of the stuff that she generally advocates for, and or it's an extreme version of what she's hearing from other people. So that's probably where what I'm saying is she learned from that is like, okay, maybe I shouldn't parrot things anymore without, that's kind of where I was going. There's a lot of parroting with her.
It could be. I mean, there could be an element of like, I think this is popular thing at the moment. And
that's pretty much where I was going.
I think also it appeals to my own, sense of like injustice or narcissism or whatever. So great. It's like a winning combination. I'm just going to spout all of this. Awesome.
Yeah. When you're surrounded when you literally come up through Hollywood, I mean, I don't know how young she was when she was her first movie, but she was, I remember when she was a teenager in movies, and it's like, you're not surrounded by people, your average everyday people. You're surrounded by a bunch of yes people. You're surrounded by agents and people telling you things that you're not even dealing with. So she came up in a very weird way. I'm not excusing her opinions. I'm just saying, I don't think she's very informed on a lot of the stuff. So therefore her opinions are probably based on things she hears from other people.
It could well be, yeah. I do wonder as well, like, was this down to, say, a realization on her own part, or did like a publicist or a PR expert take her aside at some point and say, like, go and just shut the fuck up about all this feminism and like the patriarchy and all that. Just stop talking about that, because every time you do, you kill your career a little bit more. Just talk about your movie or whatever it is you're doing at the moment.
I can picture some old producer being like, "Have you seen what the YouTube is saying about you? Have you seen it?"
It would definitely be a publicist. Without a shadow of a doubt, it would be a publicist. She would have been algorithmically just cancer to a film for some time. Like all the videos that were there, all the articles. She only had to open her mouth, and it was just diatribe that was coming out. I remember she did that. She did that like she answered the internet's most questions and all that kind of stuff, and she's like, "Oh, is that microaggression?" All this other kind of crap.
Yeah.
There was definitely a tipping point, where all of a sudden, boom, it's like a light switch. The earliest I could find was that 2023, because it was just so, the Johnny Depp one, because it was just so random. Like, of all things, again, her doing that speech, I don't care what a 40-year-old white dude's got to say.
Yeah.
I don't care about you. It wasn't made for you, blah, blah, blah. That woman would have jumped at the chance to be like, yeah, no, I think Johnny Depp's scum, actually, blah, 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 blah. And obviously, it's still the same woman, obviously. But clearly she's been told, no, you tone this shit right down. And like in all of her answers as well, like especially this one, it's deflection. It's not an opinion. It's just deflection. It's, well, I can't answer this. Or why are you asking me this? I can't answer this unless blah, blah, blah. So she's not given an opinion either way. It makes her easier to look at, though. So at least there's that.
Yeah.
She's probably really happy that Rachel Zegler exists. That's for sure.
I mean, that probably has taken a lot of the heat off her, but like, Rachel Zegler is speedrunning her way to like where Brie Larson is now, because she's obviously a lot younger.
What?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but like I'm thinking of like she is what happens when several years elapse after the controversy, and like your career kind of goes nowhere. You start off with like someone who's a rising star, starting to get into bigger and bigger movies. In Larson's case, she got an Oscar for her work in Room, which is all great stuff. And then after this particular thing, in her case, it was Captain Marvel. In Zegler's case, it's going to be Snow White. The career just flatlines, and there's no major roles, nothing's going on, and then boom, you're kind of done. Rachel Zegler is just at that tipping point because Snow White hasn't come out yet, so that will give her exposure, good or bad, and then probably the downward slide will happen after that.
The main difference being that Rachel Zegler didn't have the Oscar, didn't have the success before. Every movie she's done has been a failure leading up to this big moment. So it's not even climbing a mountain that she's going to fall off of. She's just on a plane that goes to a cliff. That's it. There's nothing. She actually has nothing to fall from.
I mean, I said this on Real BBC the other night. I call it the Jennifer Lawrence effect, where there's a very specific arc that these actresses go through. They're an up-and-comer. They get a great deal of success with a particular franchise, a particular movie that gives them a lot of attention, a lot of fame, so their star rises very quickly. It all goes to their head. They get a little bit too full of themselves. They start mouthing off and spouting a bunch of very ill-advised shit. Starts to piss people off, and then they go on that downward trajectory. And it happened to Jennifer Lawrence over a period of, 7-8 years, gradually descended into like mediocrity, and like no one really cares about her anymore. It happened to Brie Larson even quicker with Captain Marvel, and now it's happening almost instantly with Rachel Zegler. So like they're finding ways to be more efficient about their destruction, which is impressive. It's good to be efficient about things.
In the case of like Jennifer Lawrence and Brie Larson, I can kind of understand it. Whereas with Rachel Zegler, I don't understand why she is doing this. If there's no one like reining her in, because she was in West Side Story, was her first movie, which I haven't seen. Supposedly it's quite good. Shazam 2, terrible. Hunger Games 4, terrible. And then 2 movies I've never heard of. And then we've got Snow White. This is not a woman who's had a decade of a career in Hollywood. Her first film was in 2021, and it seems like, what was it, a year ago that the Snow White trailer came out and she pissed everyone off? So her career lasted...
She pissed people off for West Side Story. I don't know if you remember, but she stamped her feet about not being invited to the Oscars. So they made her a bloody presenter.
I did not know.
She stamped her feet. It was either like, so she's been pissing people off from the start. And also she played a pedo in Shazam 2, just as an FYI. So,
I know about the Oscar thing where she whined about like West Side Story, like more of the cast should have got invited to the Oscars or something, or she should have been there, and then she ended up getting a presenting gig there. Like they basically caved to her. because she was diverse and she felt like she was owed something because of that. And so they said, oh, we don't want to offend you. And so that was it. I think that more pissed off people within the industry. I don't know how many people in like the general public were aware that that was happening. Like we obviously do because we're in that sphere. But yeah, it's like you can tell that they tried to rehabilitate her image a little bit. Like she did that sit down interview with Halle Bailey from The Little Mermaid, where they talked about their mutual love for the Disney franchises that they were part of.
Awful.
Yeah, but it's like, it was awful, but like you could see what they were trying to do there. Like she was very like styled and manicured. She was very soft spoken and feminine, and she was talking about how much she loved this movie and she respected it so much. And like she was trying to play a role of someone who was like a professional actress who was respectful of the source material. But again, it goes back to the point I made before, where a person reveals themselves when they think they're untouchable, when they're top of the world and they think they can say and do whatever they want. That's when the real person comes out. And that's who she was in all those interviews where she's mouthing off about like it's weird with the prince being like a stalker and the original movie was shit and we're putting our spin on it and all that other crap. That's the real opinion that she has. And so I don't think there's much rehabilitation that you can do with someone like that. And I think she can't help herself.
No. And she looks like Sid the Sloth from Ice Age as well, just as an FYI.
Well, I think she even like she came into conflict with Gal Gadot for obvious reasons, because like Rachel Zegler's like current Hollywood thing, pro-Palestine, yay, Gal Gadot's Israeli, that's not going to play well with her. So yeah, imagine the tension there.
I can't wait to make the movie interesting.
Every time she opens her mouth, it's bad. They had those actor strikes, didn't they? And she was on the picket line, and they got a soundbite from her. She was like, "Well, if I've got to wear a Disney dress, a princess for 8 hours a day, I deserve to be paid for every single minute that it's streamed." You're like, mate, you're a millionaire. Shut up.
Yeah, like, it's like that strike was not about people like her. It was about lower level actors who are barely getting by, and like the people who are really having to grind out like day-to-day existence, living paycheck to paycheck. It's like don't try and make that about you. Like you're not in the same boat as a lot of these people who are striking. But again, it's just like, nah, it's all about me.
Could you imagine if they paid per streaming minute to people? It would, every single movie and show would be bankrupting the companies, because it's impossible to account for that in any kind of accounting.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think the cast of The Acolyte would made about £5.50 for their work on it.
So that, yeah, sounds about right.
There's something good about it. I was going to say as well, there's a nice little epilogue to this Brie Larson tale. Shall I present it to you, gentlemen? So the reason the Telegraph did an interview with her was because, as I said, she was promoting her new play Electra, which was playing in the West End in London. And they gave it a 2 out of 5.
Oh dear!
That's what you get. You should have answered that question.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, the reviews are pretty stinking for this one. Apparently, it's dog shit.
Jesus.